Hello, everyone. We've got Joe Glimes and Jackie, and today we have a guest presenter, HotKeyIt / Eugen. We're going to be going over using AutoHotkey H, which is a fork of AutoHotkey. It's a tasty fork, I hope. But so we're just getting started here. Let's go on. And as I was mentioning here is, hey, I'm doing one-on-one interviews. If you're interested in being interviewed, let me know. I'd love to talk to you. Just get examples of how you use AutoHotkey. Right now we have roughly, there were 17 registrants. I think you can tell I'm guessing it looks like we have about that, maybe more. There were only 17 registrants. I sent to the like 80 or so people because if you haven't re-registered, I still emailed you, so I'm kind of spamming you. So if you do want to keep getting emails about this, go sign back up. The link is different now. And so I'll put a link here in case you haven't signed back up. But go sign back up, so because I'll probably do this one more time, and then I'm not going to keep hitting people with it because I don't want to annoy anybody. But yeah, feel free to go ahead and register. Everyone starts off muted at the second hour or somewhere in there because Eugen has a fair amount of stuff to cover, and it's amazing stuff. Usually we go the first hour, and then at the second hour we open up to Q&A. We'll probably do something like that today, but it might be a little bit later. Anyway, so go ahead and either raise your hand or post a question in the chat, and Jackie and I were monitoring that and we'll read it and help, because when you're presenting, it's just hard to do both. Or if you have a really complex question, just let us know, and then we'll unmute you and you can ask your question if you want.
Yeah.
All right, moving forward. So I had in one of those interviews the other day, I was talking to Rick C. He's actually had it here in Dallas. I tried doing an AutoHotkey meetup, and he's here in Dallas, and so I met him. Anyway, I had an interview with him the other day, and he mentioned he has a script that will automatically, he can basically hit a hotkey, and it'll start recording his desktop. And so it's using FFmpeg. And so let me show you my script. He gave me a bunch of stuff, and then scripts. But at the time when he did it, I got a response from him already now. FFmpeg didn't have a built-in way to record your desktop, so you had to download this other additional thing. Then he was using a Perl script to get the size of your desktop and other configuration stuff. So I took his idea, and then I basically redid everything. I found this GDI grab parameter that you can add, and built into FFmpeg, you can record straight to your you record whatever desktop you want and save it automatically as a MP4 file or a MKV file. There's probably other options too, but I'm not going to go into all the parameters I set, but I thought let me do a quick demo of it. So it's launched right now. If I hit, so right here, this is Control-Shift-R, right? So what that's going to do is it's going to delete my temp file just in case it's there, and then it's going to launch FFmpeg. Actually, these are the parameters. This is going to launch the program with the parameters I put up here, just so it's a little easier to read because it's a really big line. And I actually made a video, I'll link to it, explaining all this stuff. And then it minimizes the console window. So you'll see it over here that it's recording, but it's not going to show anything on the screen. And then when I hit Control-Shift-S, it'll basically send Control-C to that hidden window, which, what a terrible hotkey, right? Control-C to stop recording. That seems bizarre to me. I bet this was from like Unix or some other system where that's not a thing. And then it asks for the file name, and then it'll actually run the video real quickly. So let me do Control-Shift-R for record, and that did not seem to do anything. Let me make sure it's running. Oh, there it goes. I don't know what's going on. Let's try it. All right, Control-Shift-R. Okay, now I don't know if you saw that. It blinked really quickly. So now it's recording. I can see this right here. This is just saying it's recording the screen. And then when I hit Control-Shift-S, it's going to ask me for what do I want to name my file. I'm going to call it duh. And that's going to open up the folder, and then it's going to open up my VLC player, which is probably on the other window. So that's the folder. Oh, no, it's here. If you saw that, it blinked really quickly. So now it's recording. I can see this right here. This is just saying I just turned down the volume. So this is the recording I just did, right? So very, very quickly, I have a hotkeys to launch my script, to record it, and to stop it. You don't have to have it play after, but you might just want to open the folder. But This is going to go into my main script, so I'm always going to have this available, and I don't have to do anything. It's just I can hit Control-Shift-S, start recording my main desktop. Somewhere up in here in the parameters, I can tell it, where did it go? Somewhere I told it the dimensions. Oh, it's right here. So you can tell the dimensions. You could also pick a certain application if you wanted that to be default. I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to build a custom GUI to interact with this before it launches, but I wanted something really quick on my main screen that if I'm doing something, I can quickly, record what's there. So that is it. Jackie, I don't remember. Do you use FFmpeg?
No. Is it built into Windows, or do we actually need to download it?
You have to download it. What's nice about it is you don't have to install it. You can just download the executable, and it'll run. And then you just put in, like, did I leave that folder open? So here's the FFmpeg. It's 60 megs almost. There's the executable, and then in the same folder I put my script, and then that's it, right? It runs.
So you could actually have it on a thumb drive or whatever. Yeah. That's quite nice, because I was looking for a good way to record my screen the other day, and our software shop didn't actually have anything that was very proficient at it. So I was looking for something that was portable, and some of it wasn't really very usable. So something very simple like this would actually be good.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say was something I forgot. What was I going to say? Oh, it does a lot other than videos. Like you could also you can edit videos. So you can crop, you can cut, from the front or in the middle to the back. You can, like I used it, I had some audio files that had a hum in them, and so I automated building a threshold when it was below a certain amount or taking out a certain frequency, right? There was another one that says you can when it's below a certain frequency, just cut all the noise. And so that got rid of a lot of the big white background noise. And then another one was to the audio files I found were really low in volume. And so I reprocessed them, increasing the volume by like 50%. So they were much louder. The other really cool thing is when you're doing a lot of the stuff, it doesn't re-encode the video. It'll treat the audio as a separately. And so when you process it, it's not taking an hour to do an hour. It takes a minute. Actually, I trimmed one of these videos that was like an hour long, and it took like 8 seconds to trim. I mean, it was just like, oh, it goes to this point, trims it, and just rewrites the file instantly. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's nice. Greek Dude, he actually posted something in the chat where he says that he would recommend putting the parameters in a continued section so that you could actually comment on.
Yeah, I thought about that too. I was trying to keep it small enough where I was going to put it in here, and then I realized that one was so wide. But anyway, that would have helped break it a little bit, but. I agree. Even then, it would help remind me what in the world they do. Like this, you can get a list of the audio devices, and so that's the name of my Yeti microphone. But each of these things were like pretty nitty gritty, and I didn't go study. I just would see an issue, like it said, like, hey, your thread queue size is running into issues, and so I'd Google thread queue size, and then I would just see a parameter, and I would put it in, and if the error went away, I was done, right? I'm not one that I really care like why things are that way. I just quickly see if they work or not. But no, that's a good point of code readability, and just when you get back into it, it can be very confusing, right?
Yeah, let's say that you go away from this for a month or two, and then you come back and think, hey, I had that recording thing. What was it? And then you need to do it with another audio device or whatever. Yeah. And you're like, how did I actually do that? A comment would be great. Yeah.
Right. The other thing I did, I'll dump it in a notepad or site, is I added my syntax assist. So this is QAP, and I added one. I'm going to start building my library here. So here are two examples. This first one is how I would cut a specific time range. I'd go to 21 minutes and 1 second, and then I think this one, it goes, I listed the time it goes to. So basically trim out everything before that and go to that time point. And the second one was an example where you just list the first one and then it'll automatically go to the end. But it was, again, I love like QAP or using this with snippets where I can pull up examples of it, and it just takes you a minute to add them, right? And then you don't have to go find that one script where you did it, which for me can be really problematic.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Well, let's get going with AutoHotkey H and HotKeyIt or Eugen. This he and believe me, he blew me and I think Jackie too away a couple weeks ago. There was a lot of stuff, but we're going to cover some of the more common stuff, and then we actually so I recorded the video of the three of us from a couple weeks ago. I didn't want to release it before today because I didn't want people to watch that and not this, because I think this is going to be a little more specific. But I'm also, after the webinar, I'm going to make those other ones available, because I think there were 2 videos and I think it went, over 2 hours, I think, in total.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
And it was some amazing stuff. It was just very deep stuff, like in how to configure, what was the editor? Studio. No, not Studio.
The Studio, yeah.
Yeah, the Microsoft
compile, yeah.
Yeah, and how to compile it and stuff. So we documented all of that because it's pretty involving. But he's going to go into some amazing stuff here. So I'm going to stop sharing. Eugen, if you can go ahead and share your screen. And thank you so much for coming here today and covering this. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too.
Great, so let's start. So as you probably know, all the stuff is on GitHub, so you can download it from there, the releases and the source code. So I don't know if you should go to in compiling the DLL straight away, which is a bit more of detailed stuff and all the steps which we covered in the other video. So we can go quickly through if you like. So you simply download the zip file containing all sources, and then you'll need to apply some changes. So it's going to compile with the newest Visual Studio. So if you copy it somewhere on desktop or whatever, then on Visual Studio, we just open the solution we just saved.
And here, the thing is that a lot of people may not be used to actually using Visual Studio. But yeah, this shows at least the steps that you need to go through, so just watch it on slow-mo or something.
Yeah, at some point you will need to, when you want to change the password, you will need to compile, because that's the only way to do it. And therefore you will need to go through all these steps and download the Visual Studio, which is free for personal use. And so it's no problem to compile it. I put the few steps on the text file, so there isn't much to do, but still need to go through this stuff. So if we update the SDK to the current version, and to make it so we need to do the to change the start project to AutoHotkey. Sorry, this is in German, but I think you will be able to find the English stuff. And actually, I'm going and change this to XP, so it's also working on XP. So you can select all the configurations and change the version to XP. And then do the same for Win32. And also for the lib project. Right.
So the other thing, which is what we learned during this, was you can do all of this, which is if you want to create your own specific password. right? That you know that then when you compile it, you can go back in and you can get into it after. But here's food for thought. Like if you just want to use AutoHotkey H to compile your program and you want the password encrypted, but it would be like a random password that you can't hack it, but neither can, at least, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. It's much more difficult for someone to hack, to decompile, but even for yourself, because you wouldn't necessarily know the password, there's a much easier way to do that than what he's doing here.
Yeah, so the simple compression will do this thing so the simple user will not be able to decompile it easily.
Yeah.
So, yeah, take it.
Yeah, it's just right now you're showing the steps of actually doing the one that's really hard to decompress, right?
Yeah, this one, when you change the proper password and do it very difficult to recover it, it will be very difficult to decompile, especially in 64-bit, as this one, there isn't that many decompilers out there, like OLEDbug and this stuff. So we changed the XP 141. Then we need to go to directories and inherit the standard settings for this. So you go to properties and simply to Visual Studio, and it's for the include directories. So you'll go here to change and just apply from the upper, so from the main settings. Also, you need to find the file which is missing. You will see the errors which will come. And for me, I've just searched for the file, and we can go and see what it says here when we try to compile. So
all of this stuff that HotKeyIt is showing us here is, at least to some of us that only normally do stuff in AutoHotkey, can be quite daunting, I'd say. And I know that when we have seen a couple of these steps, there's left. He has a method that Joe mentioned that will give you some protection that's still better than what L has. And but let's see this now, so that we actually know the one that gives you the most protection, and then afterwards the
simple one, yeah. So for this one, this compiled, I think it's because it's the bug which was working fine. The release might not compile, but it seems to pick up the settings I've set last time. So I did it in a fresh folder. Let's have a look if this one also works. Oh, this one is the error, and this is same. This doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. Must be something here below. Error link. So the lipmin hook, right? Yeah. This one I've included the other versions for the 141. So if you go to desktop, to the source and lib, here you have this for 2010 Visual Studio, and this the 12, I think, and this is the 15 or 17 even, and this is the 15. So in our case, it's the 141. We need to change them. So I'll just do the first put this rename, which is 130, and rename this one back to lib, and then compile again. And now it's compiling already. So it did already had the settings I changed last time.
All of
So
these
that's why
settings that you changed, we have those in the other videos. So if
exactly, yeah. So this is just these two things to change, or three things, and then it should compile. So now it's finished, and there are a few posts where I explain where to change the things to do the password. So here we have the in util CPP the password, which is a simple one. So it's simply a letter, then some spaces, so zeros in binary, so it's not just a word which is saved in the executable. And all it does, it just picks up the letters because it multiplies the a index by 5, so it always takes the first and the fifth and the 10th and so on. It's very simple one, so this is quite easy to recover, and I think there are also tools which will recover this on the internet. Probably you can find them very easily, but they still exist because some of the users send it to me. And to do it very properly, you will come up to something more difficult. I've done a few things with the one guy who had this decryptor. I've created here a function which just accepted the parameter of index, and this function generated the password from internal data exe. And out of this data, so you will see when you debug it what it gets, what data comes, and you can then use this password as your password. So instead of putting one password which you like, you just generate something, whatever code you come up with, and use that one as a password. And this can do, because this is completely dynamically, there is no password saved somewhere. It's just using the source code, or not the source code, the machine code, which is inside the exe. And that's the best so far I found.
Yeah.
So if you go to the website and go to the normal I'll do it on the V1 version. V2 is still not finished. I'm using it already 4 or 5 years, I think. I'm not using V1 unless for the very old scripts which I had. But because it's not finished yet and the syntax is not final, I'm still waiting for Lex to finish all the changes he planned and to release this version. And that's why I also didn't do that much on the AutoHotkey as well, but not only because of this, because very busy with work and moved my living place. So there will be a lot more coming, I think, when it's finished and start to establish and change. So every user changes to the new version. And we finally have all the, all right, it found a virus. Look, this happens all again and again. So once they fix it, you don't get a virus. Then another time, it finds a virus again. It's basically because the compression from Visual Studio and some stuff which is in AutoHotkey, and it's not a real virus. So as you know, all the false positives we've been with. Don't know if it will open up or not. Should open up. It seems like it doesn't. That's odd. So if I save it first, let's have a look at this mode. Otherwise, I will use the one which I have locally. So to install it, simply you can copy it on the pen, on your drive, on network drive, wherever you want, and just start it from there. There is no installation script because I didn't have time to write this one, and I never really bothered about this. Still planned to do somewhere, but never found time to do this yet. And as I say, I'm waiting for V2 to finish so I can then kind of close the V1 and don't okay, let me turn the off because it won't let me download. Okay.
Again, how long have you been developing AutoHotkey H?
I think it started in 2009, something about. When I go here in the history, we can see where the first commit started. And it was started by Tinku99 on the old forum still, where he created the DLL, which was the only task to do the multi-threading in AutoHotkey, because there is no native multi-threading support in AutoHotkey. So when the DLL was created, it's like an exe inside another program inside your program, and it's a full AutoHotkey which runs there. It actually goes back only 2015,
yeah,
but it's definitely older. Yes, that's because I deleted. I remember. Yeah, I deleted all the old stuff because I wasn't sure. So you can just view here how long it goes back. I think it was 2008 or 2009. So right, so you download it, you can just copy it somewhere wherever you like, or replace your existing AutoHotkey exe. So simply extract it. When we go through the files here, so we have some library files I've put in, and the ANSI version, the Unicode and x64 version. The compiler, which has all what you need beside the exe, which needs to be copied, and the help file, which is the old help file. I will always use the new help file from this link. So here's the only documentation, or you download the V2 version, which includes the documentation file as well. So here's really very, very old stuff, which is from the version 1 when I first created it. And there is not much here, so a little bit explanation and the. I didn't read it for 10 years or so, so you can go through and have a look, and there are still, it's all still works, so it's still the right description of all the functions which are exported from the DLL, and there's also the struct and size of, and it's still all valid, but there are meanwhile a lot more inside. Right, so to be able to compile, you need to copy an exe file to compiler and it or rename it to AHK2exe, so you can start easily, and that's it. So you just run it and you have the compiler. So here we have the section which allows you to change the password and do the compression, and just a second. When you open up an exe, normal one, you can go to RC data, we can test. So if I compile something with simple script inside, just a text file. So when we go to compiler, select it, and the desktop. Rename to HK, so it's like proper, and do the Excel here as well, just the temp as matter. And we do no compression, nothing, just normal compilation. And you need to select the first time because it doesn't have anything in the settings registry, so it won't be able to compile. So you pick up whatever you need for compilation. And when we open the file now, we'll be able to see script as a normal compilation. So very easily to recover. Now when you use compression, it will compress using some internal zip functions, which is not very easily to decompress because it's a custom function, so it's not a simple zip file, and you won't be able to see the code anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's garbage, it's compressed. And this is mostly enough because a simple user won't be able to read your code. He would need to dig into it, find how it's compressed and so on, and find all about the AutoHotkey H to be able to view the code.
Yeah.
You can also use Empress to do even more compression on the exe. So just to mention here, in AutoHotkey H, you can compile using any executable. So even a DLL can be compiled and have the executable code in it. So if I use now here AutoHotkey exe, it's the same, and it will be able to compile. Okay, this error you will get because there is no MSVCR 100 DLL. When you compile in the newer version, there will be, let me have a look, because it's still using the, because I've downloaded, sorry. In the, you will need to copy always this file. So when you compile with the newer version, you will need the newer file as well. Here it's saved in the, sorry, it's here. It's each folder. So this is for 32, this is for x64, and you need simply to copy to your folder or C Windows System 32, depending on the version as well. So normally it's easier to put it in the same folder. It's a little bit of a pain, but this is necessary to do multi-threading because all these access use the same runtime, and they need to be able to manipulate the memory from several threads. Okay, this from here. So here is the encryption. The standard password is AutoHotkey. You can also simply compile it. The AutoHotkey will be used, so additional to the normal zip compression, it will have also the encryption, but it will be simply word AutoHotkey. Okay. In the exe, you have the option to run new scripts. That was the point to having this. So look where I put it. So you can use the E switch or to run a different script. So even the one we have here, compiled version, it's able to run a separate script. This is useful when you want to run another script with your compiled exe. So if I put here a new file, just message box, new test. So, and I put it on the exe. You will have the nothing, yeah, because we didn't use the switch. And now if I do the batch file, or I can do it also from a main script, but just to start. But oops. You can also do a link, sorry, if it could be easier. So just do a link, and in the link you set the switch and the file you want to run. So it will be like this, and it will be the test.ahk. Did I add space? Yes. Okay. Doesn't work as it should. Let me have a look why it might be.
Is it not because you've actually called it start bat? No, Okay.
Yeah, this one doesn't matter exactly. So
Okay.
it's didn't we put it here? You shouldn't matter, but okay, here we go. So it now runs the new AHK instead of the test, still using the compiled exe. So you normally can't run other scripts, but here using the exe, which we use for compiling, it's a full working AutoHotkey, which is still able to use any other stuff. Right, so when this is for compiling and installing, so as I said, simply copy the files and you're ready to go. No need installing. If you want to, so if it's new installation, you can open this and say always use this file and just browse to the file and select the executable which you will use. And that's all you need to double click an AHK file. Okay, so if you continue with the, like we've covered compression encryption, yeah, this compression is, you will find some information about it in the help file. If you do zip, there are all the zip compression functions. You can also create normal zip files and unzip files and do the zip raw memory, which is doing the job for us to compile resources and uncompile resources because it's working with a pure memory. It's also used in some other functions to reduce size. And encryption is using the password. So whenever you want to use this or change the password, you'll need to recompile, and you can have a look on the video how to recompile and change the password. And as I say, you need to come up with something difficult, so a hacker will not have a simple decompression possibility. Right, if you go to WinAPI, you can also find in the help file. Probably we start with Dyna call first, because this is what the WinAPI is based on. So as you normally do a DLL call, message box, that's the normal way to do things.
Can you zoom in like 1 or 2 levels just so people can be a little easier to see?
Oh, you mean, yeah, sure. I can do it that way. Okay. So then we do just hello and string text.
Can you increase the font size on the window?
Have a look.
If you hold down Control and scroll with your mouse, it'll.
Yes,
so, there we go. Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Right. So when we run this, it will simply do a message box. That's the usual way to do DLL calls in AutoHotkey. And in AutoHotkey H, we have this Dynacall version or Dynacall function. So here it's like the same function and the same what you use in DLL call. So if you have a DLL, you specify the DLL and then the backslash to import the function, and then you specify the string. So here we have the first one, which is the returned value, then equals, and all the parameters. We have UE, string, and UE. So this is like setting the function. Now we have this function message box, and you call it like the objects way. So if you do now message box, that's the best way to do it. And 0 test. Around, just the other way around. And then you'll be able, oops, to call it. And there are a few good things with this, because as you probably know, in AutoHotkey, when it finds these functions, when it loads a script, it replaces the message box with an address to be able to call it quickly, but it's not possible for custom DLLs. With this, you can do any DLL, and it will replace this body code and everything to make it run faster. Additional thing is you can omit parameters. So you can call it also without parameters. It will still do the call with all the empty stuff.
So,
yep.
Just to clarify, because I mean, for some people, if someone is watching this and they're not used to it, obviously it's easy to make a message box in AutoHotkey, right? That's not what he's getting to.
Correct, yeah.
He's getting to is like, hey, if you're doing a DLL call, he's using message box because it's not too complicated. They've built in much easier ways to do DLL calls in AutoHotkey H, right? The example we're doing is a message box, but this is where I remember when we walked over this a couple weeks ago, I was so excited because I'm like, I often stay away from DLL calls because they take some work for me to get into, and you've greatly simplified that process to me, where I can feel much easier to go in and do one now.
Correct, yeah. And you can read on the help file, it's all explained there. Kind of cool. What you can do and what you can specify, and a few examples here as well. And here another very good function is to specify your parameters, default parameters. So if you do it like this, it will save the default parameters, and whenever you call it without parameters, it will use these default parameters, and you will still be able to use another parameter.
Oh, neat. That's really cool.
And replace this parameter, but not the other one.
Right.
Not sure what it will do when I simply don't use the parameter, so it will be empty, okay. Something probably to improve, to use default parameter when you don't have a parameter, but currently it uses empty, like if it was like this. Oops, let's keep getting. Right. And based on this stuff, which I built first, and then I come up with short, or the help with the all DLL files, because as you know, DLL, there are so many DLLs. Just the standard Windows DLLs is a huge collection of all of them, and you always need to look in the internet how to use them, what the parameter is, and this is like a pain always when you start, especially when you're a beginner. And to make it easier, I've built this WinAPI or API, which is just doing it automatically for you. So whenever I will call a message box in AutoHotkey, it will automatically import the function, and it will be just there. So you don't need to do anything. And it's done for a lot of functions, so you can find on the help file all the DLLs functions which I've done it for. And here's also explanation how it's defined, so how to understand what is in there. And here are all the DLLs which I put in, and a lot of functions. I'm not sure how many, probably thousands and thousands of functions.
Yeah.
Which you can very easily use. So you can also search here, message box, for example. And it will show you all the functions. And normally you can click them. It doesn't work always, but mostly it will bring you to the explanation on the MSDN. So you can read a little bit more about it, what it does, and so on. So when you're into it and you know the DLL stuff, it's really useful not to specify all the parameters and all this stuff, and it's really easy to use.
Yeah, that was where I mentioned before. Jackie helped me in a couple DLL calls where we were going through and just finding the exact parameters to pass to one. It was so confusing, and so that was why I was so excited to see this, because it's greatly simplified.
Yeah.
However I look at it, I still don't have a complete understanding of unsigned integer and strings and all of those different pointers and all of those parameters that you need to define to do a correct del call.
Mm-hmm.
But here, where you actually get so many of the del functions already completed for you, that just simplifies actually using different del.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
Together with the struct function, which we'll cover later, because a lot of DLLs require structures instead of simple parameters, it's then really quite easy to use this, I would say, yeah. So here, as we know from AutoHotkey, all we have is numbers and strings, and that's all what we need, and that's what I try to do, simplify the use of DLL code. Okay?
Awesome.
Then we'll go to, yeah, sure.
For the multi, because we had a question about this, and I think it's more appropriate to bring it up before we talk about multi-threading. Can you in some way explain, like, you know, in the normal AutoHotkey L, there are threads, right? But it's not multi-threading. But can you just kind of give an explanation of the difference between the two?
Mm-hmm. So if you look here on the help file, it's set here about the remarks. It's explained what the threads are here. So actually, make it easy, the threads in AutoHotkey are rather kind of run periods. So whenever some code runs, you can interrupt it, or you can stop it, pause it, and another stuff can come in. And while the new thread, the pseudo thread, comes, the old thread is waiting for it to complete. And internally, AutoHotkey is doing all the backups of the parameters and every environment variables and all this stuff to make it possible to run multiple stuff as if it was multi-threading. And this is different from real multi-threading, where you have really two things running at the same time. You can notice it very easily in the task manager. When you look on your processors, you will always see for one AutoHotkey it can only use one processor. It's never able to use all the processors. So if you have 10 processors, you can only use one with one AutoHotkey. And if you want to use all 10, you will need to run 10 executables, which will communicate between each other and so on, which is quite difficult to do, because there is no simple way to communicate through between the scripts, and not very efficient. And to change this, AutoHotkey DLL was born by Tinku very long ago. So to be able to do it inside the exe directly. And all it does actually, it loads the AutoHotkey again into existing process and starts another instance in a separate environment. So they both are completely separate. They run at the same time when you have multiple processors. Otherwise, they of course get processor time, and it's similar to AutoHotkey threads, but still different. And you get much more out of it. So if you have multiple processors, you can run code faster.
Yeah, awesome.
But you have, of course, to design it, and you have to make sure that they can communicate and all this data, and so on and so on. which is also Simplified AHK H. So from when I started to develop this, it took very long time to understand all this. I wasn't really into working with the AHK code, and this took some time to develop all this, but in the end there are now a lot of functions which will make the life a lot easier with the multi-threading compared to C++ multi-threading. So to do this in AutoHotkey H, in the first days we simply copied multiple times on the drive and then loaded them one by one, and you could run multiple threads. Still do this but it's not necessary anymore because it's all in.
Hey, Eugen? Eugen? You there?
No, you left.
Your bandwidth is cutting out. I was thinking, how about you stop your video, which will free up some of the bandwidth.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yeah.
Oh, fine.
At least somewhat.
Yeah, okay. Looks like connection was a little bit lost. So here is the explanation of the AHK thread, which starts a new thread using the internal AutoHotkey DLL. So from this resource, I've put the data inside. So DLL and the mini DLL, they are all included, and you don't need any separate files beside the MSV CRT one here. Only this file and the access necessary to run the thread. And it's quite easy to use. This title parameter v1 version, and you can also use another DLL with this. DLL to use. For example, you can use the v2
Unfortunately, you're cutting out more than you're in.
Simply do H. Let me have a look if I can have a better place here, better connection.
Oh, okay.
Better now, hopefully.
We'll see. It sounds better.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Good.
Excellent.
And here is all what you need to start a new thread. Then the HK variable will hold the references to the object which controls completely the thread. So to start, for example, a new instance or a new script, we simply do this, message of main, exit, and run it. Let me change to v1 because this is v2, which is different.
And just to clarify, so for multi-threading, from the explanation you gave earlier, basically we would pick things that are really labor-intensive for our CPU, so that way we can leverage multiple CPUs. Is that
correct? Yeah.
Right. Okay.
This is one of the usages, also to make the script not to make it more stable and not to freeze.
That was actually, yeah, because Jack, you remember that example we talked about with the IE window, and I think you go to open a folder or a file or something,
yeah,
and it would lock it up, and this would be a simple workaround for that. Is you now literally have multiple threads that can not be stuck somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
not even set timer and stuff like that works.
Exactly, yeah, the set timer, nothing will work on the script which is waiting for a DLL call to finish or some internal function from those. So if we go to see how it performs or what it does, I think I have example on the critical object page, which will come also to one of the functions which is very useful with multi-threading. The critical object stuff is using some internal Windows functions to cut off usage or prevent using multiple threads one object. So whenever one thread is accessing the object, another one has to wait to be able to access the object. And here's a simple example how it works. So we load 4 threads and put them in separate variable, and all they do, they kind of import the object in their script. So simply using the pointer and also the critical object function, and all they do, they change the variable, which is for each thread different, or the key inside the object, to their current index. And then in the main Excel, we simply show the content of the object. So if I run it, you can see all threads are running and changing the different key for them. And when we look in the CPU, you can see that every CPU is being used to run this stuff. And it's very good from Windows, so they've done, I think, a really good job, because you can see how the threads perform, and you see that they are quite good running at the same speed, kind of. So there is a little difference. One is sometimes slower than the other, but mainly they are quite good compared to the speed is separated very good. And also when you stop it, it will simply exit all the threads and finish the execution. And the main thread is always responsive, so it doesn't freeze when this runs. Normally, when you do anything inside the script, you can stop it, or you can hit the hotkey. It will, within the sleep time, when the loop does the next iteration, it will be able to do something else for you.
I'm just curious, what would happen if you, because you have four CPUs on your computer, right? What would happen if you set that to 5 for your loop?
The Windows will manage which processor you are using, just to make sure that it doesn't overheat, you know.
Okay.
But it wouldn't help you much.
No, I know. I was hoping it wouldn't crash. That was all.
No, that's for sure not. You will have 5 threads, so you have 4 threads with DLL and another main thread, which is running here. So you could use all the 5 processors, and you have to make sure, of course, when you run the thread, you need to tell them what they need to do. So split the work, whatever it is. One is, for example, doing the GUI, the other one is doing some other job. You will have to see what you come up with when you need. I mean, for me, it was very quickly, probably 1 year or 2 years after I started AutoHotkey, I wanted to have the multi-threading. It's when I started to build a program which just helped me all the time to do things. And because AutoHotkey freezes very often, for example, when you look something on the on your shared drive, so the loop files and folders, it freezes because it's loading database in behind and so on. And that was the main point when I needed multi-threading, because I wanted my script to be able to do something else while it's loading the files on the drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that a question someone wrote was, what are other reasons other than performance for using multi-threading? And I think that was a perfect example. What you just said is like your script itself might get tied up, and since it's sequential in the main one, it's not parallel, it'd have to wait until that thing finishes, and that can be problematic.
Correct.
Are there other reasons?
Yeah, there's one reason to make your code very clean. So when I wrote a few things, one of these is my program, you can really separate code. So like do modules.
Oh.
Completely working on its own. They are completely not dependent on any of your code. And they are very small, easy to manage, like include files, but they are like, there is no dependency.
Right.
And another good thing is you can share objects between them, you know, so to make the communication very quick. And specify the what you need to communicate to them. So the interface between the scripts. And you can control still, so when we do this, I can go and say loop for and pause all of them. And I will just do AHK pause, and it should stop them all. But we won't see anything happening because we need to sleep or something, so they can do a little bit of work before we stop them. It was not enough. We don't see anything, yeah. That's bad. We need to see something that is happening. I put it just below. So if you do it like this, and I put another hotkey, Control or Shift R, which will pause them. Right, so Shift R. Doesn't do it. Is it because of the hotkey?
Is the dot still supposed to be there before the AHK pause when you use percents like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
That should be there, but I'm wondering if it's unresponsive. Let's do it in the, but I don't think that's the issue. I'll do it that way.
This is why I love webinars and doing things live, is because all of this is so far beyond my skill set, but it's still great to see. There we go. That even for him, at times you got to play with it, right? It's not.
Yeah. That's the problem because it's parameters. Simply click. Yeah. Now you see they're paused and nothing happens, and if you do
toggle it,
yeah, then we can pause. Oh, two of them didn't. Oh, sorry, not good idea to do it in the loop. Get rid of this. So now we can pause them and run them again.
Cool.
That's another thing to good. Whatever your script does, you can also control it completely, rather than going with the right mouse click on your exe and adding all the function you want. You can directly control the script. So it's not only for multi-threading, but also helps a lot separating the work. For example, I use with a database, I load the database into all scripts, the SQL database, SQLite, and they all are able to do different stuff. One is importing the data, another is creating some new tables, another one is exporting the data, and all this parallel. So whenever possible, of course.
Incidentally, so and John's on the call. He can't talk, but he's on the call listening. He's going to lead our next webinar next month on using SQLite in AutoHotkey. He has some cool stuff. We were playing with it. It's amazing. So anyway,
yeah,
hopefully.
absolutely. Yes. On the web.
I noticed when you alt-tabbed, I noticed the threads on your CPUs, and you can see they were all being pinged heavily. That was awesome. Yeah.
You're working all together. So here there are some functions with, especially for AHK H, and this is the wrapper which is using the Dynaco as well. So here it's very easy to put the SQLite and use it from there.
Right.
We could cover this as well to have a look through. It's quite easy to use, and there are a few helper functions to import stuff from or to object, from to file, from string to string, and from auto, and the same to auto. And this is something I use at work a lot, and it's really very performant and very easy to use. Just love it.
But this is actually a good example of something that can be data intensive, right? Like when I worked at TI, I was dealing with millions of rows of data, and AutoHotkey on its own, right? That's going to take a lot of process. This can greatly speed up that process.
Absolutely, yeah.
Is ADO, that's the ADO built-in Windows database, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Where you do the normal connection to Access and SQL and Excel, whatever you can do there. A lot of stuff. And here, if you just look a little bit to the code, this is where the SQLite class creates data. So you have the options and the DLL, which we need to specify, and it also can load it from internal Excel. So it checks if there is internally SQLite saved and loads it, and then it simply uses the Dynaco to link all the functions inside. So you can use them simply by calling, like here, the SQL and whatever function, exec, for example, you know? And this is all you need to do. Instead of running like DLL call and then the path to your SQLite .dll, then the function exec, and then the parameter stuff, and all this stuff you don't need to, because you simply call the function from the object. And you can also have multiple objects, so load completely different databases, share them between the threads and so on, because this is also multi-thread able, the SQLite. And for me, I mean, compared to whatever is on their payable or not, so like the Access database or SQL, which is internal by Microsoft, this is so much easier to use, the SQLite. It's completely portable, free.
Free, yeah.
Unbelievable, yeah.
We were testing, Maestruth and I were testing some stuff, and we were blown away at how fast it was and everything. It was awesome.
Exactly, yeah. Me too.
to clarify, so someone asked if AutoHotkey H was included in L and vice versa, but obviously I know that's not true. But remind me of this: like even in your version of AutoHotkey H for version that's similar to L, are there syntax difference in that? Some differences?
There are two differences. This is varset capacity, which is in L the data can be garbaged, or the data is reset when you change the capacity. So if you do like var and put zeros, so it will be an empty. We need to specify the size. Let's do, I don't know, 100, doesn't matter. And then we can set some data in there, or let's do numput. And the number 1 directly int, so, and then read it out. Right, so we have the 1. Whenever you do, let's put it 4, for example, which is still the size enough for uint. when I don't use this parameter, the last one, and increase the data here, then the previous data is copied and it's still available. This is something I changed especially for structures. When you make your structure bigger, then it's containing still the old data, so you don't need to back it up and put into the variable again. You increase the size and it's automatically copied over, and you don't lose your data.
And just because I see it here, and I think maybe it was Jackie or someone else mentioned this before, but I see you using the ampersand in front of var, like on line 2 and line 4. Am I correct? Does that mean that like that's a memory location? Is that what it had to do with or something?
Correct, yeah. Memory location of the variable.
Okay.
And in AutoHotkey H, you can get the real variable, which is low-level stuff. So there is quite a few low-level stuff in it, which I've implemented, which is a bit different because normal variable have different spaces where to save a number, where to save an object, and where to save some string. Some of them are shared, but some of them are different. And this one is actually saving using the same location where the string is. So if you do like set something text for variable, we can string get we get the address of variable and simply use the standard encoding, and we can read the text in there. And we can manipulate the text as well. So,
and sorry, I think I'm remembering this from our conversation with the three of us. Some DLL calls require the memory address, and that's where this comes in super helpful, right?
The struct will be very helpful. This is what you normally use always, which is a bit of a pain to use always numpad for the definition of a structure. Many users find it okay, but for me it's a lot of code you need to write, and you need always to make sure that the different versions are covered, so 64 and 32-bit, because they use a different structure definition, and this is something which struct normally covers all and can help you there. So we've done a little bit of the sharing objects between the threads. So if I go back to the one that we had.
Actually, can I get you to pause just for 1 second? So, as I see we're at an hour and 17 minutes, I just want to break up the videos. So I'm gonna stop the recording and then start it again, and that way, it's not so long that people have a really hard time finding what it is. So let me stop it real quick.